Awesome. Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Um, I'm your host today, Pat, and I'm joined by Dr. Andrew Huberman, our lead advisor at Madefor, and our special guest, Leo Flowers. Couldn't be more excited to have all of you here. Thank you for making the time. I know this is the first time that we've done this format where it's Andrew, myself, and a special guest, but these base camps going forward, we really want them to be an opportunity for all of you to come together wherever you're at in the program and come together with our team here in a way that leaves you feeling inspired and encouraged and incentivized to get into action and to share any kind of lessons learned or takeaways that are relevant, that may map to every member's experience. So we're going to feel our way through this. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty in terms of how this is going to go, but ultimately I think this is going to be effective for you. And I couldn't be more excited to have Leo joining us. So with that, Leo is one of these people that I've historically been a little bit jealous of. Leo is he is an actor. He is a comedian. He is a successful podcast host. He's someone that has a master's degree in psychology and in counseling. He was a former Division I football player, college athlete on scholarship. He's just someone that is so immensely talented and has been so successful in many different environments across many different areas that from the outside looking in, he makes it look easy. And as someone who nothing has ever come easy to, I'm a little bit jealous. So, but I'm excited to have you here, Leo. And I think that our members are going to benefit from hearing a little bit more of your story. To kick it off, and the way that for our members, the way that I want to do this is we'll talk for maybe a half hour about hopefully hearing mostly from Leo and not so much from me, but about Leo's story and some of his learnings. And then maybe we'll dive into some of the brain science as it relates to those stories, and then open up to your questions. And as always, you can post questions in the chat, or when we get to the Q&A section, you can just raise your hand and we'll get to you. But to kick it off, I was talking with one of our members who happens to be a psychologist a couple of days ago. And Natalie said something that was really powerful to me. She said that, wherever you're at, regardless of where your members come from and the types of experiences they've had prior to Madefor, it is, if you just look at the statistics alone, it is most likely an absolute certainty that 25 to 30% of your members are experiencing some level of anxiety or depression that is clinically diagnosable. And she said that you just have to know that and recognize that there is a portion of your membership that is dealing with that and feeling the effects of that. And I was kind of blown away. I was like, oh my God, that's really powerful. I said, do you think there's anything that we should be doing differently? And she said that, she said, no. She said, everything that you're putting forth is exactly what people need. They need to get into action. They need to engage in these small steps that help, again, to use our words, bring out the best in them. But she said, no, I think the program as it's designed works really well, regardless of what you've experienced prior to the program. But she said, it is important that you recognize them and talk to them. And I think it's a nice segue into to having Leo on. When Leo and I were talking about this call today, we covered a lot of areas of his life, but at the end of the call, I said, Leo, if there's one takeaway, one thing that you are driven towards and excited about going forward, what is it? Like, what's the thing that drives you? And his response was, I want others to feel less alone. Now, Leo, you host a podcast called Before You Kill Yourself, which, you're a comedian. I recognize that there's a little bit of humor in that, but it's also a very serious topic. And I think it may come across to our members as like, wow, that seems negative, and this is a program about positive pursuits. But this idea of you want others to feel less alone, I think is powerful and something that will resonate with our members. So I'd love to hear, maybe if you want to share a little bit with our members, like, why is that your thing, and what has brought you to that place?
Great question, and I'm glad to be here today, Pat. Thank you for having me. One of the reasons is that I've always felt like an outsider growing up, even with all the accomplishments, college football, having a master's, comedian, actor. I've always felt like an outsider. I've always felt accepted, but never a part of any particular group. Like I went to a Catholic school as a kid and I felt accepted even though I wasn't Catholic, but I never felt a part of because I wasn't Catholic, you know? And I was one of the only Black kids in my school. So I felt accepted, but not a part of. Even once I got to college and played college football, it was in Indiana, which, you know, for a lot of people who were raised in Indiana, I was the first Black person that they met and saw and talked to. So once again, I felt accepted because I was an athlete, but I didn't feel like I was a part of that culture in Indiana, specifically Muncie. I went to Ball State. And then, you know, even in my own family, my mom is from Belize, Central America. My dad is from Alabama, and my dad really wasn't around because he had another family. And so I'm half Belizean, I'm half, you know, African American. And so when I go to Belize, I felt accepted, but I didn't feel like I was a part of because I didn't grow up there, and I didn't speak all the languages. I didn't know all the cultural references. So throughout my life, and then even in America, just being, you know, raised on the north side of Chicago, you know, Black people would often say to me, or at least other Black kids would say, wow, you're so articulate, you enunciate, you don't talk like us. So once again, I felt accepted, but I didn't feel like I was a part of. And for me, it's not that I never want anybody else to feel that, like they're not a part of, but I do want people to learn how to manage that and how to reframe that so it's empowering instead of you know, disempowering or you know, something that needs to be overcome. It's something that you can utilize to help you thrive if you reframe it in a certain way.
I love that. And what I like about you talk about these different environments, the north side of Chicago, a Catholic school, playing football in Indiana. And after some of our conversations, I started to map out, unbeknownst to you, I started to map out phases of your life. And the first phase, the way that I broke it out is almost this phase of certainty. You were plugged into, and I know you said this, you were plugged into systems. You knew how to perform or how to navigate high school. You were on a college scholarship and you learned how to navigate college. You were in a master's program. You learned how to navigate, but you were in, regardless of whatever environment you were in, it seemed like you were in a place where you discovered how to adapt by looking outward and how to create certainty within that system to be effective within that system. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. You know, one of the benefits of being an outsider, at least feeling like an outsider, is that you kind of get the bird's eye view of how everything operates, right? Like if you can't talk to a fish about water, it doesn't understand. It's been in water its entire life. So it doesn't even know it's in water, right? So same thing when we grow up in a system or in a culture, we don't really know we're in it. We just assume the rest of the world operates as we've been raised, right? And that's the benefit of traveling, of, you know, watching documentaries and different TV shows or even different news channels that are outside of your cultural norm. So you get, you know, different perspectives. I forgot what your question was.
Yeah, no. It wasn't. I think you hit it. It was this idea that that you were navigating systems. You found out how to be effective within those systems, and that was really just that was the question. I think something that was really interesting that you shared yesterday when we were talking is that the last part of this, what I'm calling the first phase, was really this master's program that you were in. And a part of that master's program with the counseling and psychology was that you were put in a position to go into prisons and to work with prisoners and to inmates. And I'd love if you would share the advice that you were given prior to going into that environment.
My professor and mentor, Dr. Meunier, he was one of those. He was like 6'4", had the beard. You know, he taught without books. He's one of those professors. It was it was all up here. When he spoke, you leaned in. And on our first day of going into work with inmates, he said, listen, when you work with wolves, you either will become a wolf or you'll become a sheep. But you won't walk away from this unaffected. You're gonna go to one side or the other. And I was sharing with you, Pat, that very quickly I found myself not necessarily becoming a wolf, but thinking like a wolf. And then I was afraid I was going to become a wolf, because when you're working with inmates in a prison population, they're sharing with you their life stories, but not just how they grew up and the abuse and the drugs and all the scams that they pull, all the ways that the system, screwed them over. But they're also sharing with you all the scams that they pulled off. They're telling you how they robbed the bank. They're telling you how they, stole money from an organization. And so you start noticing where they went wrong, because if you're intelligent and you start piecing all these different things together, and then you walk into a bank and all of a sudden you're casing a joint, not even intentionally, but you're recognizing when the guards switch and the camera angles and what teller you could be friends with, and and which one would give you the most money. You just start noticing these things, and who beats their wife, and I just didn't want to walk the earth like that. As I was sharing with you in our previous conversation, as for somebody who wants everybody to feel less alone, I didn't want to see all the walls and all the obstacles that were between us. And I didn't want to look at humanity from that perspective. So I had to change course.
Yeah, yeah. You said to me that you recognized coming out of that you wanted to play a role in how you were programmed, that you wanted to be selective in terms of the people and the environments and the things that you did, because you recognized that mapped to kind of how you showed up in the world, which I think is really powerful. And it's interesting that you go from this first phase of certainty and systems, and then you come out to LA, and in LA you want to be an actor, you want to be a comedian. And in your words, you said you brought a lot of ego to that experience. You took the certainty that you had in those systems and you carried it forward in this new environment. And you quickly found out that the new environment didn't work that way, that you had underappreciated all of the structure that had been around you in the past. And now you're in this new environment, and things kind of got dark quickly, as you said. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, some of us thrive in systems, and like I said, because I had always been in a system, the school system, the football system, the masters, like you don't know that you're thriving because of the structures put in place until you're out of there. A fish doesn't know that it's able to move and do its thing because it's in water until it's on land. It's like, what's going on here? And so when I moved out to LA, and I just thought that I've been crushing it. It's like I have a master's degree, Division I athlete. I went to a Catholic school. Like, what can I do? And then I had some very early signs when I moved out here that things were going to move very quickly for me. So then my ego became, muy grande, and then it got really dark really quickly, and where all of a sudden, like, I'm not landing the auditions I thought I would. I'm losing money because I can't hold a job because I'm going on so many auditions. And then, my relationships are faltering. I let my social relationships just dwindle because I'm about to be a star and you're going to be calling me soon anyway. So don't worry about it. And I found myself very lonely, very, very lonely, very broke. I was evicted. I had to live out my car for a few years. And, but part of what kept me going while I was living out my car and, just trying to maintain some sense of dignity, partly was the ego of like, I'll figure out a way. The thing I shared with you when you asked me, like, what did I hold on to? What gave me hope? And I told him, algebra, physics, and that even though I sucked at it, at the math and sciences were not my strong suit. I always took the lesson away of we're always solving for X, right? We never know what X is. Even the best minds are constantly trying to solve for X. Right now, Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist, he's trying to solve for X. What's the unknown? What does this mean? Why is there a space here? And that X is always there, right? Whether it's how do we get to Mars? Elon Musk, one of the smartest, most brilliant people, he's trying to figure out how to make a rocket ship that's reusable. How do we make a rocket ship that not only goes to Mars, but then comes back and lands in one piece? So we're constantly solving for X. It always exists. And that was the thing that gave me hope, is the fact that I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes or in the next 5 days or 5 years. And so in that unknowing, sometimes that can undo a person. Sometimes that can rattle you. That can create intense anxiety, the not knowing. But there's also hope in the not knowing, in the fact that anything could happen at any moment. And so when people talk about this quarantine is like, we're now in a time of uncertainty. Like, we've always been at a time of uncertainty. We just haven't always been as aware of how much is really out of our control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said two things when you were talking about this, the years of being homeless and living out of your car, that really resonated with me. One was that you recognized you weren't afraid to work. You weren't afraid to figure out what X was. And then the second part was that you saw opportunity in uncertainty. And I think both of those map really well to what our members are experiencing, and that this program doesn't work without effort. And so you have to be willing and inspired by the fact that your effort and your actions can produce results for you. But that the second part is that there is a lot of unknowns. There's uncertainties, and oftentimes we call that uncertainty friction, or we call it we may call it headwinds, but that there is opportunity in the friction that you're experiencing. That when you feel particularly challenged, that's a sign to you that you're not only getting better, but that you're progressing towards where you want to go, as long as you have the right vision in mind. So I really like this idea of effort and growth in uncertainty, and I think it's really powerful. I think.
I'm sorry. I want to and to add on to that, because you're talking about growth, and I know that's one of the tenets of Madefor is all about growth. And I think that a lot of times people get so caught up in growth that we don't realize that it requires taking a few steps back. We forget that sometimes it requires starting all over again, right? That's the power of reading, of sharing our stories, is that we realize that we're not the only ones going through it. If you look at Steve Jobs built Apple from the ground up. Now, did he do it by himself? No, he had Wozniak and he had help, and there are people who but that was his baby. And if you read his book or watched the movies, you learn that it was taken from him. The board of directors were like, you're no longer fit. That's like if you're a parent and somebody goes, you're no longer fit to raise your own children. And when I saw that, I was like, my God, Steve Jobs, who raised a company to be, worth billions of dollars, who was innovative. Like, that's one of the tenets at Stanford is forward thinking and being innovative, and then to have his baby ripped out of his arms. And so when we think about growth, we also have to think about it might mean starting over, because Steve Jobs then was able to pivot from Apple and then started Pixar, right? I mean, wow. And then he came back to Apple. So he came back stronger. Nassim Taleb calls that anti-fragile. When you face adversity and you don't just bounce back, but you bounce back better, you get stronger as a result of the pressures and the adversity that you face. And so, I'm always reminded, a lot of people talk about they want certainty, they want things to be stable. But, I've spent enough times in hospitals. I've had people in my family die from diabetes, heart disease. I lost my father to cancer. and all, like he had 3 diseases, all the things. And the thing I'll never forget is that when you're dead, it's a flat line. It's flat. It goes flat. This is, to me, this is stability. This is certainty. But when you're alive, when you're breathing, boop, boop, there's peaks and valleys. It goes up and down. So the fact that you might be in a valley right now, in a downward spiral, means you're alive. That means that you get to experience this. This means that there's another up, and you just have to be willing to do the work. You have to be like, all right, I'm in a valley right now. You know, do I have enough water? Do I got my electrolytes? What do I need to go on this next trek? But, you know, we all think of growth as being this linear, just straight arrow, but it doesn't work like that. So is, you know, the thing, like you said, that held me onto hope was the fact that I'm always willing to do the work. I'll start over. I'll burn this all down and we will start over. So if you're willing to do that, then you can keep moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. In the SEAL teams, we say we're still in the fight, that you can constantly assess, and if you're moving, if you're breathing, you're still in the fight, and that means that you have an ability to affect the situation, and so get into action. Really, really powerful. Speaking of peaks and valleys, Leo, you mentioned that one of the things that you really enjoy doing is reading biographies of people, and something that stood out to me when you were commenting about these biographies is that you recognize by reading these stories of these very famous people and we know them by their peaks, right? By the wins, the highest wins, their greatest successes. But it's in reading their stories that you understand the depth of the people and really where the value is created. And one lesson that you shared with me was from a biography you read on Rockefeller, which was this idea that you should always ask for help before you need it. That he would always hire good people in advance of needing them for a particular job, because he said, you know, if we bring the right people on, like they'll prove out their worth and like everything will work out. And it stood out to me that this concept of ask for help before you need it, because you also mentioned that when you were homeless, that your pride and the certainty of wanting to do this on your own, that you may not have reached out for help when you could. I'm curious how you think about that now. Is that?
I'm always asking for help now. Even if I don't need it, I'm like, help! Like, I ask everybody for help. I want everything. If somebody offers me something, I take it. You know, I read somewhere someone said that if the universe, you know, offers you a penny, if you don't pick up that penny, it stops offering you pennies. It stops offering you quarters. Like, it just stops offering you things. So when somebody is offering you something, whether it's a penny or a job or an idea, to take it. And then it's up to you to figure out if you want to toss it out later, but take that, because after a while, people will start to think that you don't need them anymore, because every time they offer up something, like, no, I got it. I'll take care of it. I'll do it. Don't worry about it. And it's okay to say, yeah, help me out. Like, you know, Chris Rock in his last special, he said, you know, moving a couch is hard, but it's easier with 2 people. And we have this idea in America of like, this idea of self-made, of like, I'm a self-made person. I did this myself. And we take a lot of pride in that, but nothing has been done by one person. You go back to Apple, you go back to this country. That's why we have multiple presidents. The way America is today is because of all the presidents that have come before us, the Pilgrims before that, the Native Americans. We are standing on the shoulders of millions of people. And so anytime you accomplish anything, you have to thank everybody, and you have to thank everything that's come before you. You know, the thing that bothers me the most is when I hear celebrities or someone say, I came from nothing and I made something. And it's like, for you to say you came from nothing, you're saying that your parents were nothing, your community was nothing, your friends were nothing. Like, you came from nothing and you did it all on your own? Like, that's preposterous. There's a lot of syllables in that word. But for you to think that you did it on your own. And so as soon as we realize that, that we all need assistance, right? Look, even companies, whether you're talking about the airlines, whether you're talking about the banks, what are they looking for right now? A bailout. These companies have billions of dollars, and they got their hands like this to the government. And that's why they set up offshore accounts, because they need help. They're looking for, they're like, hey, this is costing me a lot of money. So reach out, ask for help, call the 1-800-SUICIDE, call a friend. I'm telling you, everybody's struggling. Everybody, or they've had a struggle. So we can all relate when we start with that.
100%. So as I look at these phases, so the first phase, again, is this one of certainty and understanding how to be effective in the environments by looking out and seeing how best to navigate those environments through high school, through college, through masters. The second phase, maybe a time of uncertainty and transition, going into a new environment without a system and structure around you and figuring out how can you retain hope, how can you work towards and find opportunity in uncertainty. And sounds like a really challenging phase, but also maybe one of the most pivotal phases of your life, and one that you wouldn't trade. But as you go from that transition phase, I feel like this next phase of your life is really one of, I'm calling a mission, but one of conviction, and one where you're looking inward to see how you want to guide your actions going forward. And to think that you're able to distill it down to that you want others to feel less alone, I think has got to be so powerful for you and give you confidence and certainty, no matter what you're facing, no matter what environment that you're in, but in a way that helps you be effective. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
A few things are coming to mind right now. And talks in terms of like wanting people to feel less alone. I was when we were taking Ubers, right? We all were in an Uber at some point, and I remember talking to my driver, and he's from Nigeria, and he was listening to Kenny Rogers. Kenny Rogers is a big country singer, and I'm like, did you put on Kenny Rogers because you think I like Kenny Rogers? Sometimes you get in the Uber, they put on music that they think that you'll like. Or I was like, or are you into Kenny Rogers? And he said, oh, in Nigeria, I'm doing a horrible Nigerian accent. Please forgive me. He goes, we love Kenny Rogers. We love country music. And I was like, really? And he said, yes, because we love stories. And that was such a powerful lesson to me of why, we love movies, right? Why certain artists are able to stand the test of time, whether you're talking about Prince or Michael Jackson. Why children's books are usually like the top sellers, whether you're talking about The Hobbit. We love stories. And it doesn't even have to be a story that is ours, just any story, beginning, middle, end. There's a podcast called The Moth, and they're huge because it's just people telling their stories. So in terms of feeling less alone, the way that we do that is just by sharing your story. And a lot of people, I think, are afraid to do that because they think that their story is too small. It's not grandiose. But I just shared on my Instagram story yesterday that I had 6 donuts for dinner. I was like, I had 6 donuts for dinner. How's your Wednesday going? Right? And the number of responses that I received was overwhelming. And it was, it was a short story. It's ridiculous, but it resonated with so many people of like just the stress that they were feeling, or, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, or, sharing whatever food that they have. So no story is too small. It's too insignificant. One of the things that we talk about in therapy is there's no hierarchy of pain, meaning that whether you're suffering the pain of a job loss or chronic pain from chemotherapy, or pain from whatever else you're going through, there's no hierarchy. One pain, it doesn't trump the other. And so when we realize that, there's also no hierarchy of storytelling. You can tell your story, and there's somebody who will latch on and connect with that.
It's very, very powerful. you've said so many things that I think map really well to what our members are experiencing. We have members that are navigating disease, that have lost loved ones, that have lost their homes in fires, that um, are navigating unemployment. Um, People are facing very real challenges, and they're trying to find ways to face those challenges better so that they emerge stronger, more capable, and in the process um, feel better about themselves, but then also make those around them better. And I think your story and your example and what you've shared in terms of how you transition from these different phases to how you view just that we need to ask for help before we need it, how you view the power of having a mission and kind of an internal conviction, I think is really, really awesome. I'd love to transition. Yeah, go for it.
And I throw one more thing in there. And there's a lot of people right now who are in relationships. And, we always talk about how, you can be in a relationship, be married to someone for 10, 20 years and still feel alone. And part of that aloneness is one, you just haven't shared those tiny stories. I've talked to so many people and I've coached so many people who don't realize the power of really sharing their day. They think their day was nothing, because they're a cashier somewhere or they do construction work and they're like, I did the same thing. But really it's in sharing the mundane things that it helps to keep the connection going. Don't underestimate what you had for lunch today. Yes, it's small talk, but it's still talk. And that talk leads to something else. And, when I think about growing up and all those TV shows, there was a time we all sat down at the dinner table together. And it was like, tell me about your day, what you ate. You went around the table, everybody did that. We don't do that as much. And so we've lost that art of connecting on a daily basis, not just, going for these moonshots in relationships because you want that Instagram photo or that thing that'll, make everyone jealous. Me and my girl today is our 1-year anniversary. And she asked me, what are my most memorable moments from our past year? We were in Peru. We've traveled a lot. We've done some really cool things. And my response was the quiet moments. The moments were like, we drove up north to Santa Barbara and I really felt connected because we were just talking and there was no agenda. We weren't talking to try to get the other person to do a thing or asking for something. We were just sharing like you did in middle school. Remember, you just got on the phone and you just talked. And there were awkward silences, but now everybody has to be like quick-witted and blah blah blah. And the power is in the awkward silences in those quiet moments. So share your story and don't be afraid of that. Of being.
We're all about the small moments and small steps here. So I really like the way that you frame that. You shared a story with me the other day about a waiter coming to ask if you could take your plates. I'd love for you to share that with our members because I think it maps really well to what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, there are all these like BuzzFeed articles about like, what do women really want? What do guys really want? And it's like 20 things on the list. And there's always like a chainsaw or like a new trimmer or, there's something that they're just trying to get you to buy. And we have 3 basic needs. 3, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. That's it. That's all we want, right? And 2 stories to highlight that is we're at dinner the other night and with some friends, and we had eaten everything off our plates. Like there wasn't even a morsel. There was nothing for the ants to come get. And the waiter comes over and he was like, "Oh, can I take your plates?" And in my head, I'm like, "Yeah, like there's like we're clearly done. We've ravaged this place." And he was like, "Well, I asked because sometimes if I just come take the plate, the person says, please just acknowledge me first. Don't just take my plate without acknowledging me and asking me first." And I thought like, wow, that's so powerful that, even in that situation, people want to be seen and acknowledged by the waiter, right? And not to, put down a waiter, but by a stranger, somebody they don't even know. They're just like, please see me, acknowledge me, and then you can take that. But a more powerful example is a couple weeks ago, we're in Santa Monica having lunch, and we're on a patio. And the patio had like a small little gate up to separate the restaurant part from the sidewalk. And this guy who was homeless walked up to the gate to where we're eating, and he starts repeating back everything that we're saying. And so me and my girl are like, yeah, we just got back from Peru. And he's like, yeah, we just got back from Peru. We're like, yeah, we had an amazing time. Yeah, we had an amazing time. And so we did that thing where we like hyper focused on each other, right? Like if we just look at each other and put our heads down, this will go away, And of course it doesn't work. And finally I turned to look at him and I said, I see you. And he looked at me like, what? And I go, I see you. And he said, thank you. And he just walked away. All he wanted was to be seen. And he didn't care if he had to make a fool of himself, if he had to take his hand and put it on our plate, or whatever he had to do. He just wanted to be seen. And so a lot of conflict in relationships is just us wanting to be seen by the other person. And so I just wanted to share that with you, and it was just a powerful moment for all of us.
Amazing, thank you, Leo. Okay, we're gonna switch gears here. Andrew, I'm gonna pivot over to you. I have a specific brain question I want to ask you, but first I just want to ask if you have any general thoughts or questions for Leo or anything that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I was just basking in all these amazing examples. Leo, incredible. Yeah, so many thoughts about this. I'm reluctant to do my reflexive thing, which is like to, break things down into the underlying mechanism, because I think there's so many deep lessons by way of example and story that you just provided that are just powerful in their own right. So I just want to acknowledge that, because yes, I was listening. It's interesting. One of the things that, as most of these people on this Zoom know, I spent a lot of my life blabbing about the brain and stuff it does and what you can do to make it work better and all this stuff is a big part of my existence and my mission in life. And I think there's value in that. I also think, as I was listening to you, it really, all the stories collectively and the examples that you give and the all these gems that you were dropping there are a real indication of how, the brain and the nervous system and our psychology and our heart and our body, it didn't show up. It doesn't look the way it does because it's supposed to do one thing. We're sort of, the word that comes to mind is kind of a technical one, but it's about algorithms, right? We're not designed to just be able to thrive in one environment, or to just connect in one environment, or to just solve one kind of puzzle. This is why, on the kind of negative side of it, stress doesn't feel good, because it was designed to move us. Well, it was designed to move us toward and away from a lot of different things, not one thing, right? And the confusion comes from, well, am I supposed to move toward, away, or pause? And there's some work involved there always. But on the positive side, and this is so much of what I was hearing woven into what you're saying, Leo, is there are ways like around connection. Your story about this homeless guy, really presumably homeless, but this guy that was initially disturbing your lunch, and then you recognize him, is especially powerful. Where I live in Oakland and all over California, I think all over the world now, it's a like increasing problem. I never quite know how to react to it. And the fact that the algorithm that was it was so basic, it's connection. It's the same thing we seek when we sit down to dinner with loved ones. It's the same thing we seek when we get or receive a text message. The brain and the nervous system they don't think text message versus phone versus people I don't know on the street. It's seeking the same thing. It's running the same, like at a deep level, running the same scripts. And I think there's hopefully power in understanding that, because a lot of the foundation of Madefor, so these folks will, I know, are different stages of the program, but a lot of the foundation there is, you know, yes, it's about drinking water, and yes, it's about reflection, but it's about the deeper process that builds up, so that can carry over to anything, right? And it's not that the acts are meaningless; they're all very meaningful, and all the examples you gave have so much meaning. And beneath all that, there really is a deeper meaning to how we're wired. I love the notion that we're designed to be seen, be heard, and to connect, and to feel connected, to really know that we exist. And anyway, I just think it's, you gave so many powerful examples of this, that our brain and our body run we're at some level, we're all pretty it's running simple. The things we need are simple. The way it shows up is complex. Getting those things can be sometimes complicated. But at the end of the day, like you said, we're all solving for X. I love that. At any moment, we're solving for X. And learning how to solve for X, in one case, is basically the same as learning how to solve for X and all the other things. I'm basically just saying what you said, Leo, but far less eloquently, with far less impact and power. So, but I think there's a ton of neuroscience in what you described, but more importantly, I think you described the human experience, and it's really what's needed right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew.
Andrew, question. So Leo said, you know, at our core, we just want to be seen, heard, and understood. And I think when we're seen, heard, and understood, we feel most connected to other people, and connected in a way that that builds us up and makes us stronger. What's happening in the brain when we're finding these moments of connection, or when we feel like we're, you know, Leo's in these quiet moments with his girlfriend where he feels especially connected? What's going on there? And is that a place that is that state, or that that model inside the brain, is that something that we can build up over time so we can find that more often?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a case where we really can point to some powerful chemicals in the body, oxytocin, some of the serotonin, the chemicals that are released when we feel safe. You know, safety is an interesting word. I'd love your thoughts on this, Leo, because, you know, we think about it as feeling safe and then kind of exhaling, like with relief, like, okay, I'm safe, nothing's going to happen. That flatline idea of life, like, okay, I'm safe, everything's just stable for a little bit. But really, safety is what allows us to then lean back into challenge, right? The more safe we feel. Let me give an example. It's a hypothetical example, but if you know that the people in your life and you will love yourself no matter what, you're going to feel more willing to go out and embrace challenge, right? That's just the way it is. So, you know, when they say safety first, we always think of it as well, okay, you know, fasten your seatbelt, don't get hurt, don't get injured, this kind of thing. But safety is really about possibility. You know, and we never chase safety for the sake of something else, but when we feel, you know, seen, heard, and understood, then I really believe that then we feel a heightened capacity to bring bigger gifts to the world, right? I mean, it's possible. There are examples throughout history of people who had almost nothing who still gave and gave. It's very hard, but when we feel like we're in abundance, when we feel safe, we have a ton to give. And then just everything, there's a positive feedback loop. So safety is about neurochemicals, and it's about brain circuits. And we don't stay in that place of just basking, forever. Once we feel safe, we tend to feel spontaneity, right? Because we can then explore. Animals and kids give us beautiful examples of this. Little children will walk, even the ones that are really adventurous, and they look back at their parents. Sometimes we think that they're looking at us like, oh, am I going to get caught? But they're really like, are they still there? It's an emotional tether, right? Animals do it too. And I know this because my dog doesn't listen. He's a bulldog, and he'll take off far on me, and it always frustrates me. But if I just turn around a little bit and even just face the parking lot, then he sort of like pivots toward me. He's watching. And so safety is our ability to explore. further. And humans have an innate desire to explore. And those molecules of exploration are all the dopamine and the norepinephrine, all the kind of get after it kind of molecules, if you will. But we have to feel safe. And that can be with team, family, couple, but it also has to be with ourselves. We have to feel like, okay, you know, that the notion of caring and loving for oneself is a kind of vague one. It's hard for us to appreciate. It's just knowing that, you know, if you venture off track, you'll course correct. And I think in the made for process, a lot of it is about reflection. You know, a lot of it is about connection with others, but a lot of it is about connection with self, and continually, you know, not being afraid to look in the mirror, not being afraid to take the thoughts that might seem kind of silly about something like water and putting them to paper and realizing that there's information there. And so safety is what then allows us to look to new vistas.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, we're going to transition to members' questions. And Holly asked a great one that a few others have seconded. And this is for you, Leo. So Holly asked, how do you decide who to tell your story to? Meaning, if you tell on social media, sometimes people can be cruel. How do you find a safe place to tell your story? How did you decide, Leo, where, who and where to tell your story to?
Wow, that's such a powerful question. You know, given the social political climate, I have some, you know, let's be blunt, I have some white friends who ask me about how I feel about what's happening racially in this country, and I don't feel safe enough to share my emotions with them. And for me, the safety is not in like they're gonna do something to harm me. It's that I feel like I won't be heard. They won't listen. They're gonna make it about them, right? We have people who ask about you when we all know these people. They ask about you so that they can talk about them. And so in those situations, I don't feel safe in sharing my story, because once I get into it, you can tell I'm a very passionate person. There's emotions wrapped around it. So if I feel like you're going to make it about you, now I feel dismissed and I feel shut down. And that's not a great feeling. So if you're asking about me, then ask about me, but don't use it to throw in your experiences. So you learn very early who those people are. And the other thing that I do, though, is that gives me confidence to share my story with other people, is that I'm always willing to say that hurt. You know, to say to someone that hurt, that's a very powerful, but also very vulnerable statement, because we don't admit to being hurt too often. We have no problem admitting we're pissed. Oh, you pissed me off. You cut me off. You know, the middle finger, throwing the thing, yelling. We have no problem displaying anger. And we have no problem displaying apathy. Like, I don't care. Cool, whatever. Walking away. But the nuances of emotions of that, wow, that really, you know, that really hurt me. I feel disheartened by that. Wow, that makes me sad. I feel insecure. I feel powerless. To say that feels powerless, what they just said. So to initiate with emotion, to share the emotion that you feel, is a great way, I found, to get other people to open up a bit more and to be more receptive of your story, because we try to fight right versus right. I'm right, you're right. Perspective. It's like, listen, I don't know who's right, but I know how I feel. And you can't argue. That's one thing you can't argue with. You can't argue with how I feel. That's mine. That's me. And then the third thing I do is, if I feel like I've shared something and then they're not receiving it in a way that makes me feel seen, heard, or understood, I feel like there's space between us. And I just leave it at that. And because nobody really knows what that means, but they know what it means. And you can see them shift, And if they continue, then I'm always willing to walk away. There's nothing wrong with starting your story and being like, whoa, I shouldn't have opened that one. And then just walking away. Maybe it's bad timing. Maybe you didn't, you don't know what their day was. They weren't ready. That's fine. But you can always walk away. So I hope that was helpful to, one is to lead with emotion of like, be willing to say when somebody says something that hurts you, or you don't feel like they're making it about themselves, but to say that's putting space between us. And at the end of the day, I find talking to strangers to be the best way to open up. As soon as you introduce yourself to a stranger and say hi and what you like, they no longer cease to be a stranger. So that we grew up with this, don't talk to strangers, but now we're not talking to anybody. And we've forgotten how to share and open up. But as soon as you introduce yourself, make a little eye contact, they're no longer strangers. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your story. But
yeah, that's amazing, Leo. I think the just a couple of thoughts on that is that with that authenticity often implies vulnerability, that you have to be vulnerable to be truly authentic. And I think where you move through life, where there's daylight between who you are and how you show up, that over time, that can put you in a bad place, or can make you feel even more lonely, more unheard or unseen, or less understood. And so I think it takes an element of courage to look inside and to be truly authentic to the story that you're telling. And it feeds well into a question that Natalie asked, or she made a comment about how it's important that you develop a really strong connection to yourself. And the question that followed is, Leo, how do you develop that greater connection to yourself so that you can identify with what you're feeling and tell your story in an authentic way?
Great question. We were talking about earlier, Pat, the different phases of my life and how I started in systems. And then, I moved to LA, and I'm thrown to the wild. And now I'm in a place where I'm starting over and rebuilding from the, I want to say the ground up, but just adding new rings to the tree. And so what's changed for me is that my systems went from external systems to internal systems. And what I mean by that is I do a thing called Germs, and I talk about this on my podcast, Before You Kill Yourself, and I coach this to my clients at thrivewithleo.com. The Germs are journal, exercise, read, meditate, self-talk, right? I do those every day. Sometimes I do each one for 20 minutes. Sometimes I do each one for an hour. Sometimes I do each one for 1 minute. But the way I look at the Germs, exercise, read, meditate, self-talk, in that, like, I'm like a quarterback, because I played football. So I think like a quarterback, even though I was a defensive tackle, in that a quarterback has, when he drops back, he has 4 different receivers. He has 4 different options. It's overwhelming to try to figure out who to throw to. You have 4 different options, and you have guys who have very bad intentions coming towards you, right? And so he has to click through his progressions. He knows that I have to look at this receiver first, then that receiver second. If that guy's not open, I look at the third one, and then if the first 3 aren't open, I have to dump it out to the 4th one or throw it away, right? And so what does that mean? That if after I click through my progressions of I journal, I exercise, I read, I meditate, self-talk, and I still feel unmanned, as Abraham Lincoln would say, or anxious or overwhelmed, then I'll throw the day away. I go, man, I'm just going to take a shower and just lay in bed and just throw this day away. Sometimes you got to throw the day away, and that's cool. You just got to binge watch, Ozarks or something. Throw the day away. Don't be trying to make something happen. That's when you get sacked. And now we went from, 1st and 10 to 2nd and 23. Now we're in a bigger hole. Throw the day away. Quit trying to do something every day, right? So, but it's by clicking through my progressions that that's something I'm in control of. And so it allows me to reconnect with myself, with what I'm feeling, with where I'm at. It gives me clarity. And if that doesn't work for you, the second thing that I do, last thing, is just stop everything. Stop everything. When we become anxious, when we're upset, when we're hurt, when we're hungry, when we're lonely, we're always reaching for something externally, a pill, a potion, a product, right? We're reaching for all the P's. And when you're doing that, that means you're extending from yourself. When we look at anything about leverage and power, the closer to the center you are, the more power you have, the more sturdier you are, right? The further from your body you are, my finger is not as strong as my core. It's too far from the body. So when we're reaching for things, we're reaching for a lesser version of what we actually need. And so just stop everything. Cut your TV off, cut the podcast off, cut your phone off, stop, put the food down, and just sit and wait for it. But you have to be willing. This goes back to, for those who've lost a job, maybe lost their house, you have to be willing to reset. That's how you get better at a video game, that reset button, right? You don't get one player. You got to be willing to hit the reset button. So I hope that answers your question.
That's amazing. It's amazing. We talk often about tending to our baselines or our foundational practices. And so maps very well to what you're saying with Germs, is to get into action, recognize that that you have control over this, and that it's strongest when it comes from the inside out instead of looking from the outside in. Extending yourself grace if it's a particularly challenging day or hard day, or you just can't engage in an authentic way. Sometimes it's just not right. And then being present and aware enough to know how to tend to your needs. So recognizing that action, that being busy isn't the same as making progress. Sometimes you need to serve your body, your day, your life in ways that are uniquely relevant to you. So I really love that, Leo. Go for it.
The first question about who do you know who to share your story with? We live in a cancel culture where somebody says or does something, we immediately stop talking to them, we X them out, we unfriend them, et cetera, et cetera. I keep everybody. No, sometimes you might get benched, but I keep everybody in my circle. And the reason is that sometimes your enemy has the best advice for you. I have friends that I reach out to because I understand how they think about things. And I need somebody who thinks about the problem that I'm facing, the exit I'm trying to solve. And I know that they think in that manner. So I reach out to them and I say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. And they're very good in those situations. I think one of the things that we try to do is try to make one person in our life, whether it's our spouse or our best friend, our everything. And we go to them for everything. They can't possibly know everything. When you go to university, you have multiple professors because there's no one person that can know everything. Andrew Huberman, as smart as he is, he's just studying the brain. That's how complex the body is. He's just here. There's a doctor for eyelashes. There's somebody for fingernails. Like there's a dentist, just the teeth. There's a doctor just for your teeth. So for you to think that your spouse or one person has the answers for all of your issues is preposterous. I love that word. And I want you to write that down. No, you have to, that requires a bit of social intelligence on your part, but that also requires you not shutting the world out because you've been hurt. You can't avoid that. It's part of life. But as long as you acknowledge you've been hurt, that gives you the energy to move forward.
Amazing. Okay, I know we're a minute over. We're going to ask, we have one more question that came in from owner's phone. and it's for Andrew. So I'll give this to you, Andrew, and then I'll turn it over to you, Leo, for some closing thoughts, and then I'll wrap up. So the question is that Leo talked about his time working with inside the prison systems, and this idea that over time, those interactions start to reprogram you. And the question was, is that this person knows we all have a conscious and subconscious mind, but is it true that whatever we feed our mind over and over again has the ability to work our way into our subconscious and then ultimately affect how we move through the day or decisions we make? That's for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I think about the subconscious, I just think about the stuff that's become reflexive. And without getting into a long neuroscience lecture about this, the old model of how the brain worked was you've got this lizard brain and this emotional brain, and then you've got this rational executive function that controls all that. But I don't think that that's really, I think most people would agree that's not really how it works anymore, because a lot of times you're making plans to serve those deeper impulses, and sometimes those plans are good for you, sometimes they're not. I think we want to be conscious, meaning deliberate, or we're being reflexive. And it's good that we can be reflexive about certain things like picking up a glass of water and drinking it. You had to learn that as a child, but once you learn it, it's reflexive. So a lot of our behavior is reflexive. I think there is truth to context. We're surrounded by value systems and by people and by thought patterns that, we can get, I think even the strongest of us can be pulled off center. And, Leo, gave this really strong example that I think really is appropriate here, where, he said, I don't want to be in this context where it's this, I have to evaluate all this. It's complicated, right? I mean, the work is meaningful, but there was a lot of complicated value systems and things like that. And, but obviously he's done important work with those communities, and they're deserving communities. I think that we underestimate our power to be deliberate. I think that the subconscious and the unconscious is powerful, but I think the notion that every thought we have is, our body hears every thought we have, or that any negative thought patterns are going to, worm their way into our brain and destroy us. I think that message is not supported by biology. That said, there's great power to introducing positive thought patterns, right? Your thoughts feel uncontrollable, but remember, there's two forms of thought: the reflexive ones and the ones that you deliberately have. And you can control the ones that you deliberately have. And put simply, anything we do or think deliberately has a outsized positive effect, presuming it's a positive thing, on our well-being and on the way our nervous system is wired. So there's an asymmetry there. And I think that that's where our power of being human beings really is that yes, it's hard to control our thought patterns, but we can always introduce positive thoughts. We can always introduce positive behavioral patterns, regardless of what's going on reflexively underneath the surface. And learning how to do that is extremely powerful. I'm not a clinician. I don't work with patients. I don't coach. That's Leo's territory. So Leo, if anything there feels off to you, definitely call me on it. But I just think that just like we can write our name out or a sentence out on a piece of paper, we can decide to have a certain thought. And that deliberate action and the focus we bring to it is tremendously beneficial.
Go ahead, Leo.
And to piggyback on what you were saying, because you were talking about writing it out in terms of, if you want a clear example of how we can introduce new neural pathways, I'm left-handed. And I sat down one day and I was like, let me start writing with my right hand, because I heard it stimulates different parts of your brain. And within a week, the penmanship in my right hand was almost that of my left hand, if not better, because I was so deliberate and I had to pay much more attention to how I was writing. And I posted it on Instagram, and people were just they were amazed, because I took a photo every day. I sat down and wrote one page. And so within a week, we can see changes. Within a day, we could see changes. So this is not something that, requires years and decades in terms of grooving new neural pathways. As soon as we start to plant seeds, we can see growth taking place, or not see it, like bamboo, which takes 3 years to grow.
Amazing, amazing. I think, Andrew, this phenomenon that you talked a lot about this in the past, but that deliberate engagement over time, whether that's around a specific action or habit or mindset, over time becomes reflexive, and that's really what we're working on at Madefor. So we're drinking water, we're focused on our food, we're deliberately engaging our breath, or being outdoors, or connecting with others. But over time, these deliberate engagements become reflexive and change the way that we show up. And if we're pointed in the right direction, show up for the better. So very, very powerful, and I think a great way to wrap up this conversation. Leo, I'm going to flip the script on you a little bit. I know this is something you do with your podcast. You always ask the people that come on a final question, and knowing that we started with what Natalie shared with us, that 25 to 30% of our members are experiencing some level of anxiety, some level of depression, that every one of our members is experiencing some level of friction in their life. My question for you is that there might be someone on the edge right now that's listening into the Zoom, or that's watching, or that will watch a replay of it. What is the one thing that you would want to tell them or say to them?
Let me sit with you. That's it, man. Like we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to talk. Just let me sit with you. I'll sit right next to you in this pain, in this darkness, in this hurt. And then we'll see what happens. That's all I would say. Just let me sit with you.
Amazing, amazing. Leo, I can't thank you enough for making the time, for our members, for being here, for the thinking that you've shared. You shared so much wisdom today, and I'm just seeing in the comments that people are responding so well to this, that they're going to replay this, and that this was the perfect message at the perfect time. I think for our members, obviously, it's clear Leo is an extremely high performer across a lot of disciplines. He has a really big and kind heart, but he also has a big mission in life. And I know that you can see why Leo was our first guest on these new campfire sessions. Ultimately, we want you to feel more connected. For those of you that may be experiencing exceptional stress or friction right now, we want you to know that you're seen and that you're heard, and that you have a whole community around you that you can lean into. You can certainly always lean into our team, but that we're here for you and we see you. And ultimately, that Madefor, whether you're watching this video, whether you're reading a publication, whether you're starting a new challenge, all comes back to what do we do next? What is the action that we're going to take? And how are we going to exert a little bit of control in our lives so that we can be better and help those around us be better? And so my parting thought for you tonight is this question, is what's one thing that you can do after watching this Zoom to help you feel more connected, or to help someone else feel less alone? Doesn't have to be a big thing, as Leo has described. It can be the smallest thing that you can do to be seen, be heard, be understood, or extend that to someone else. Maybe we take that away as our plan of action going forward. Thank you all so much for making the time to be here. This is the new format for us, so we're still trying to figure it out. If you have any ideas or recommendations or guests that you'd like to see in the future, please just send a note to our team account. Also, if you have a time, please check out Leo's podcast, Before You Kill Yourself. And Leo, what's your handle on social, on Instagram?
If you want one-on-one coaching, please go to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching. If you're going through some type of transition or tragedy, go to thrivewithleo.com. And then Instagram is the best place to reach out to me. You can go to Leo Flowers 2000 on Instagram, or there's an Instagram for the podcast, Before You Kill Yourself. And you can reach me through any of those mediums.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being here, Leo. Thank you all for your attention today, and we look forward to talking again soon. Take care. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Pat.